What's happening, YouTube? It's your homie S.Akuma coming back at you with another deck profile. Today is just a deck profile of a deck you have already seen, and you've seen a lot on my channel lately, and I will address that more in a second, of my Optimus Maximus deck. The difference with this Optimus Maximus list is I went undefeated with it last month on April 20th. At Top Deck Games at a case tournament that we had. It was 18 players, and so it was a good turnout. That's been about the average that we've had so far. I think the highest we had was 21. So yeah, I just want to go over my deck list that I went undefeated with, and then the changes I would like to make, along with some tips towards the end of the video. So I don't want to take too long with the deck list. You guys have seen a million Sentinel deck lists, and I just wanted to show you exactly what I played card for card and explain some things towards the end of the video. With that being said, I know my channel has been very Sentinel flooded lately, and I apologize for that. But at the same time, for all my Sentinel Nation, stand up, you know, I just wanted to get a lot of gameplay with the deck because I think it's probably the best deck of Wave 2. The only other contender for that spot is Aerialbots, but this deck beats Aerialbots more times than not. So I would say that this is the best deck coming out of Wave 2, and I love it a lot. You know, it's a great deck and very controlling and aggressive. So with that being said, all right, guys, so real quick, jump into the deck list. Most of this stuff is self-explanatory. I'll say a couple things about each card as I run through. Of course, you got your 3 Peace Through Tyranny. Peace Through Tyranny is a great card. Of course, when you're attacking, when you're defending, you don't want to see this card, but if you do, it is what it is. Very rarely you will use this card for a second effect, but it does come up. Next up, we have 3 Supercharge. This card is great to put on Prowler Ironhide. It gives your Prowler Ironhide Bold 4, which is kind of ridiculous. They can hit some pretty high numbers. Combo this with one of your powerful weapons, and they can hit some pretty high numbers and guarantee that KO. You can also use this card with Optimus Prime in his bot mode to potentially trigger his effect. If you hit one orange, one white, and one blue, you may flip one of your bots into the other mode. Now, what's more important about that is keep in mind that this list isn't focused on combining. So I'm only playing one Enigma, which I will reveal later on. Spoiler alert. And the biggest thing is, like, let's say I flip Hot Rod for the turn to deal 1 damage to an opponent's character. Well, if I have the option, let's say my Prime is already flipped to bot mode for whatever reason, later game. If I supercharge it and hit his effect, I can flip that Hot Rod back to his other mode, and then on my next turn, I can just flip the Hot Rod again and deal another damage, instead of having to wait 2 turns to flip Hot Rod and reflip him again. It probably will never come up, but it's a rare situation, but it's a possibility. So our next buff spell we have here, or excuse me, buff action we have here is Press the Advantage. This card is great overall. If you have no other actions in your hand, you can guarantee this to at least give you +2 at worst. At best, this is pretty much a grenade launcher or a reckless charge, because +2 attack on your guy, -2 defense on them equals the 4, and it can be very powerful. Of course, against Decepticons, that's where it really shines. But at worst, you know, it's just a +2, and you know, that's always great. Next up, we have 3 Press the Advantage. This card, of course, is great against Decepticons, giving them -2 defense and +2 attack to your Autobots. They have the -2 defense till the end of the turn. So if I'm attacking down on a Nemesis Prime, he keeps the 0 defense for the entire turn, which can be very devastating. And I think this is one of those these are one of the cards that single-handedly ruin Decepticons right now. And with that being said, Decepticons aren't actually seeing as much play, except for Insecticons, and you kind of kill Insecticons anyway with your attack. So this was just like icing on the cake. Is like, you really probably want this against Barrage, possibly, because Barrage has the highest health out of all of them. But Decepticons aren't really being played right now, I think, because of this card, and of course because of bashing shields. So, like, you know, blue Decepticon decks just aren't seeing play, at least in this area right now. But Press the Advantage was great all weekend. Next up, we have a card that's been a staple in Orange Deck's last format, Incoming Transmission. This card is always ideal, of course, to stack an Improvised Shield or a Peace Through Tyranny on top of your deck, but sometimes you could draw 2 just because you're fishing for an upgrade or whatever the case is, and possibly even stack like a white so you can extend your flips and go from there. But this card helps fix a lot of your hands, especially, you know, when you draw multiple incoming, or excuse me, multiple of your double oranges, and setting them back on top, of course, is where you want them in order to, when you attack. Next up, we have one of the most powerful actions in the deck, Espionage. This card, in combination with, where is he at? In combination with Autobot Mirage. Autobot Mirage, when he's flipped while in your KO pile, you may look at your opponent's hand and scrap an action from their hand. So flipping this first and looking at your opponent's hand, and then knowing exactly what color you would like to call with Espionage, is very powerful. You can call it an upgrade. You can call it anything but a no icon card. So like One Shall Stand, One Shall Fall, I Still Function, Medic, Strafing Run, etc. Photon Bomb. So yeah, very, very powerful card. All weekend, then the biggest thing is that it's searchable. Searchable meaning that it has a green icon. So whenever you flip it on attack or defense, you can just add it to your hand by trading another card in your hand. Next up, we have another very powerful action, one shall stand, one shall fall. Card I was just talking about with espionage. This card is very good to not have to waste attacks. That's the biggest selling point of this card. And or even possibly stealing an attack from an opponent's bot that they thought was safe. This deck hits very hard, even Prime, you know, when he's equipped it right. So you don't want to have to, you really never want to waste any attacks in any deck, but especially in this deck, this is very valuable. Overall, it's a great card all weekend. Don't think I would ever cut it. Then my one-ups I played, for my actions, I played 1 Reckless Charge, 1 Ramming Speed, and 1 Sentinel Enigma. Ramming Speed is falling out of favor right now because of Bashing Shield, but then I really honestly only want this for, also only really want Ramming Speed for Security Console. And I really only wanted it for Security Console against a Starscream deck. And Starscream's not really being played around here. You know, Starscream, of course, when he has Security Console, he can still stack the Decepticon Crown and have that +3 defense. And Security Console against the Aerialbot matchup, I don't really necessarily care about. They'll at most draw and stack a double blue handheld blaster or security checkpoint, but my deck still kind of runs over it anyway, like in terms of KOing it or getting their small bots close to being KO'd. So ramming speed's kind of falling out of favor right now. I don't think you need as many. And of course, I never want to really destroy a weapon with this card unless it's late game and we're scrapping for back and forth for plays and looking to make sure the opponent's character doesn't hit as hard. So. And then I played 1 Reckless Charge. This card was very powerful. Even at the 1, whenever I drew it, it was great, to put on, with Static Laser of Ironhide or any grenade launcher. Those two are ridiculous. +8 attack before you attack with the bold 1 on either one of your characters or even on Prime is put into anybody. It's going to be ridiculous, So great card. Of course, you do take 3 damage at the end of the turn, but when you're going to kill a bot, it's okay. And then of course I played the 1 And then last but not least, I played the 1 Sentinel Enigma. This card was not played at all this weekend. I will have to say, a lot of it was just my stubbornness. Had nothing to do with anything anybody said or anything like that. It was just me playing it and just realizing for myself that thank goodness for the green icon, because you can have a card like this in your deck, and I honestly don't think it matters as much because of the green icon. The green icon mechanic. Now, of course, it does matter when you're attacking and you rather have an orange in your deck versus this green, but it didn't make enough of a difference in any of my games that it was like, man, I wish this card was another card. Now, I will cut it only because of the format. The format is very heavily orange, so we're hitting each other so hard every turn, and especially in the Sentinel Mirror match, which is a lot bigger these days. A lot more relevant these days. You're never going to have a chance to combine. You're reflipping your Mirage back to its bot mode or to its alt mode to reflip it again on the next turn. You're reflipping Sunstreak, you're reflipping Hot Rod. So you set yourself back so often that you're never really going to play this card. The only matchup I can see myself playing this card against is Aerialbots. But you'd have to literally focus on setting that up so by turn 6 you flip everybody to bot mode so you can be able to combine, and that's not ideal at all either, because you also in that matchup Mirage is your best friend. You want to keep reflipping Mirage and try to take their Enigma, so that way the only way that Aerialbots are able to combine is on the turn where they defend and they're able to get all 5 of their bot or Aerialbots in bot mode, because when they defend they can grab their Enigma off of their flips and I can't do anything about it because it's their turn. So that being said, that's 21 actions, and then of course we have 3 Grenade Launcher. I'm going to move a little faster here. Grenade Launcher, not a lot to say about that. Very powerful card. 3 Energon Slingshot. I did like this card a lot this weekend. The blue was kind of irrelevant. I just wanted to test this card for that extra 1 damage. Is pretty much a zap. It's zap, and it gives +1 attack to your Sentinels. This can only be put on melee characters, by the way, as well. So if I were to combine into Maximus is ranged, so I would not be able to use this card. But this was great. If I didn't have combat commands or Hot Rod in his mode to be able to flip and deal 1 damage to a bot, this was great to push a bot closer to being KO'd, or even destroy a bot that they weren't expecting to be destroyed. If my Hot Rod was already flipped into his mode to deal 1 damage into his bot mode, they would think they're safe, unless it was well, he has to have combat commands. Well, this was another card, another out to be able to take out their bots. And overall, I liked how it performed. It performed really well. Dealing the 1 damage and then that +1 attack, I think was very strong throughout the weekend. Next up, we have Static Laser Ironhide. This is a card I recently added a second, or it's added 2 of rather. Putting this on Ironhide, simply put, is just ridiculous. 7 bold 1 on Ironhide, and he doesn't take the drawback, of course, because it's his blaster. And even putting it on Proud having 8 bold 1 is ridiculous. And even Optimus, late game if you have to, putting it on him overall is a very solid card. And mainly, putting it on Ironhide is where it's at. And last but not least, for my weapons, I have Nova's Blaster. This card was just that one guaranteed weapon just in case I wasn't able to somehow retrieve a weapon throughout the game. Next up, we have 3 Matrix of Leadership. This card was not necessarily solid, again, because of the meta being so heavily orange. If the meta was more blue-based, this could be more relevant because that spread 1 attack on each of your Sentinels, Prowl, and Ironhide, plus the Pierce 1 could be relevant. But most of the time when I had this card, I would have rather activated the next card I want to show, Combat Commands. Combat Commands was great throughout the weekend. Flipping Mirage to see your opponent's hand for an action, and then attacking one of their bots and flip-flopping Mirage again to steal another action, and really strip them of their options for their following turn is very powerful. If you need to refill your hand, you could reflip Sunstreaker and draw another card. If you want to deal another damage, if a bot has 2 health left, you flip Hot Rod for the turn, and then you Combat Commands, and then you go attack another bot, and then flip-flop Hot Rod again to deal the last remainder damage on that other character that you hit earlier is very powerful. Overall, very solid card. Utilities, or solid utility rather. And then last but not least, for my armors, nothing much to say about this. You'll rarely ever equip this card unless like you're in your last turn and you're hoping to try to reach some blues. If you don't KO their bot, I think that's the only turn you would ever actually play around and equip this. Otherwise, it's just there for the double orange. When you hit it, it's nice off of your attacks. And then I have 2 Bashing Shield. Bashing Shield was great against some decks I played against that actually played Force Field, and even just against Aerialbots when they do have their sparring gear on Fireflight, just get rid of it very easily and deal with Fireflight. Hopefully you don't have to attack him too many times, because the more times you have to attack Fireflight, the more happier your Aerialbot opponent is about that. And this is the sole reason why blue decks with armor have fallen out of favor. It's very unfortunate. The only way that they can really combat this is by espionaging your Bashing Shield, calling orange or green, and then playing their armor safely. But very powerful card, and I'm surprised it's not a rare. I will say that. And then last but not least, the card I was just talking about is I played 1 Force Field. This card actually helped me win my entire match against Insecticons round 5. It's unexpected, and I honestly might want to play more, because the thing is, if you're playing your Bashing Shield, I get that Bashing Shield is very heavy in the meta right now. But with the meta being so heavily orange, I think this is a it's a high risk, high reward card, because depending on where you're at in damage, if you can get a Force Field on your character and they have to attack into it and your bot lives and it's able to stand again and get another attack, that's big, because normally your character would die to an initial attack if you didn't have Force Field, and then it is what it is. But this card, if they do have Bashing Shield, and that means they're not being able to play a powerful upgrade, or a powerful weapon that turn, so your character could possibly live in the first place. So it's just theory. I'm not gonna say it's necessarily right. Like I said, I get Bashing Shield, and even ramming speed is still everywhere, but this is a card that is pretty much a meta call that I might want to add more of. And that's it. My deck is actually 42 cards. One thing I want to talk about with 42 real quick. It's funny, I made a post on Facebook a couple weeks ago, just showing my deck and just showing people who like Sentinels or whatever, my deck list. And I mentioned that I played 42 cards, and I had not want to say so many, but I had a couple of when you make a post public, you should expect positive and negative comments, or even criticism. But like, for people to tell me that I should play 40 cards, 40 cards is optimal, 40 cards is the minimum number you should be able to play, or you play to possibly see a 3 of card in your opening hand. You should always play 40. You should always play 40. Well, let me go on record to say that I never said 40 was incorrect. 40 is probably the most probable way to play. This was, long story short, an experiment. I wanted to see what would happen if I added more cards to my deck. I will admit, by the way, side note, that I am indecisive sometimes when it comes to deck building, and sometimes I can't figure out cards to cut, and I don't even want to necessarily say an issue, but overall, the only time I think how many cards you play in your deck, now I will say I don't think 50 or 60 cards is you should play 50 or 60 cards. I never will play 50 or 60, but I won't laugh at you if you play 50 cards. I might even go up to playing 45 personally. I think 45 is probably my limit just to do it. and see how the variance of my hands work. I think between playing 42 and 40 cards, you'll notice a difference, and you need a spreadsheet and like a whole bunch of data, and you'll notice that over the course of 50 or 100 games. We're not playing 50 to 100 games in these tournaments. I will say most of my opening hands that I opened were good. They were even better than when I played 40 cards. What ends up mattering and overriding how many cards you play in your deck overall is play skill. Playing your cards correctly and making attacks correctly is the biggest deal in terms of you winning or losing the game. 2 cards is not going to make that much of a difference. And of course, a lot of my games could have went either way, but the fact of the matter that I won, and I had a good showing, I think is good enough for me. So results will always trump, I don't want to say always trump math, but I think the math only matters in your opening hand, because after that, you flip so many cards on your attack and defense. Like One Shall Stand, I think One Shall Stand, you may possibly not even see a card that you play 3 of in like your first 3 rounds, just because of how the variance works with how many cards you flip on attack and defense and all your whites and extending your flips and things like that. So don't get too hopped up on how many cards you're playing. If you end up playing 41 or 42, it's not that big of a deal. It really ends up coming down to your play skill, because that's what ultimately is going to matter. It can take one turn for you to mess up, and all of a sudden the game is over because of your misplay or whatever the case is. As long as you can recognize it and do better the next time, talk to your friends, talk to your teammates or whatever, in order to possibly make better plays next time. I think that's the biggest takeaway from that. With that being said, I would like to talk about the cards I would like to change out of my deck. So looking through my deck list, going through, bear with me here. All right, it's probably not even, but this is the idea that I have. So a card that I'm definitely going to take out for my next tournament, as much as I liked how Reckless Charge played, in my head, it was like, I'm playing One Shot Stands already, and I'm playing Reckless Charge. If I played both, I just felt like that was, I don't want to say too much. It just took me to actually, what it takes is not just somebody telling me, oh yeah, you should play this. It's me actually seeing it for myself and like playing the card and like, holy moly, this card is good. And things like that. So with that being said, Reckless Charge I think was very good over the weekend. So with my one-shot stands, I really want to see those cards, and playing all this bold. If I'm not truly focused on bold with power punches and things like that, I think that Reckless Charge is safe to put in here for more guaranteed damage. And if you're going to kill a bot, it doesn't matter if you take that 3 damage on you. I think as long as you activate it at the correct time, it's okay. So thinking about taking the, definitely going to take out the supercharges for Reckless Charges, and also going to play Confidence, and then also I'm thinking about playing Confidence. I don't know how many yet, but I think with the fact that the meta, two recent Sentinel mirrors I played against both played Security Checkpoint, and I want to try my best to counteract their security, the Security Checkpoint just in general, even in the Aerialbot matchup, possibly with this card. Get rid of upgrades that I don't need at the time and kind of try to set up to counteract their Security Checkpoint, if they draw into it off their Confidence or off their, whatever, Sunstreaker for the turn or whatever the case is. And also, with that being said, I'm thinking about also adding Treasure Hunt, because if I add Treasure Hunt and also another Force Field, by the way, excuse that glare, Treasure Hunt will help me get to these force fields a lot more fluently, get to my combat commands. I'll see them more often because you're flipping 4 cards and getting a whole bunch of upgrades. And also a possible play to counter Security Checkpoint is because a lot of times when they activate it, it's really devastating, and sometimes it's not. But even when they activate it and you don't have any upgrades, that means you didn't have any upgrades to play anyway, which means you probably only have actions to play for your turn, which isn't ideal. But a possible play I'm thinking of in terms of countering my opponents, and again, this goes for any deck playing Security Checkpoint, is to, if I can possibly hold the Treasure Hunt until they Security Checkpoint, that might be a viable play. They play Security Checkpoint, they see my hand, they might take 1 or 2 upgrades. This is the ideal in my head, and then play the Treasure Hunt afterwards to be able to retrieve some upgrades. I think that'll be really solid. So cards I'm thinking about taking out of my deck are 3 Supercharged. This card was good this weekend, but the fact that it's not guaranteed damage versus the Reckless Charge is something. Now, the card did well for me. I'm not going to say that the card didn't do well, but I want to, this is another experiment I want to do on my next tournament to see if it, you know, because I saw cards like One Shall Stand and things like that, you know, a good bit throughout the tournament. But with all the bold, you're kind of really just like milling away a lot of your deck all the time. And the Reckless Charge will give you more guaranteed damage and less, you know, flipping cards off the top of your deck. So you're still getting powerful attacks, and you're possibly even seeing some of your cards more often in your, you know, throughout your turns. And of course, when you're putting a Reckless Charge on a guy, yes, you take 3 damage at the end of the turn. Yes, I'm also, of course, playing One Shall Stand, One Shall Fall. But putting this Reckless Charge and a Static Laser on one of your guys, and then possibly KOing their guy, or most likely KOing them, is more important than the 3 damage that you take on yourself. It's like I said, when you're killing their bots. So this is one of those cards where someone couldn't just tell me to play this card. I had to see it for myself, how good it was or bad it was. And even with the one-of, I saw it, you know, a good bit. And when I played it along with an upgrade, you know, obviously it was very powerful. But sometimes, you know, for me as a player, it just takes me to literally play it and be like, oh, okay, this is, you know, really good, or whatever the case is. And now that's not to take away from Supercharge. Like I said, I could really be comfortable with playing Supercharge again in my next tournament. But my next test will be to play without these, because this is just the evolution of my deck. And, you know, I've been playing the deck since the beginning of Wave 2. And yeah, this will just be my next test. So definitely want to add 2 Reckless Charge to make it 3 total. And another card I would like to add a couple of is Treasure Hunt. This card will be solid, especially if the meta turns into more Sentinels, and especially Sentinels, if they play the list that has Security Checkpoint. You could hold this in your hand, wait for them to Security Checkpoint, because they're going to be fishing for it, and as soon as they have it, they're going to try to activate it as soon as they can. Now, granted, they do have Espionage and Mirage to steal this out of your hand, but at that point it's just Transformers TCG. What can you do? You know, you'll be doing the same thing to them, you know, but ideally if they security checkpoint you, then, you know, you might lose some upgrades or whatever, or even if you don't lose any, then you can activate this and then recur, you know, some upgrades in your hand, and hopefully, you know, play some of them before they get another security checkpoint. Because if they can get a security checkpoint, and this goes for any matchup, you know, Aerialbots or whoever, and knock out a good bit of your upgrades, obviously it's always been devastating, you know, since Wave 1. So that's a card I'm considering adding. I'm also considering adding Confidence. Now, I played 1 Confidence in my list prior to this one at 1. I don't know how many I really want to add, but it's a card I want to revisit again. I probably won't play 3. It'll probably be 1 or 2, just to help progress my turns and get rid of useless upgrades or whatever out of my hand, and progress through my turns to fish for function for One Shall Stand, or, you know, Reckless Charge, or whatever the case is. Or let's say I have like useless improvised shields in my hand and I have Reckless Charge in my hand. It's like, well, I need to activate a powerful upgrade this turn as well. So playing Confidence will let you draw 2 cards, hopefully find an upgrade, discard 2 cards, and then you can still play the Reckless Charge and a powerful upgrade for that turn to go for a kill or whatever on a bot. And then also I'm thinking about playing another Force Field. Again, this card was really good this weekend when I did activate it. The thing is, in mirror matches, your opponent is not going to get their bashing shields early, especially early in the game when they flip for attack and defense. They're just going to bypass them, and especially if you see 1 or 2 bypass throughout the game. But until their deck reshuffles, you know, this force field is good, spot on. So that very next turn, they need to go deal with this bot, and if they don't, well, then the force field continues to stay, and then, you know, you can send it in on your next turn after everybody stands, so on and so forth. And the biggest thing, again, with this is if they use Bashing Shield on this, depending on the health of the character that you had with Force Field, like let's say I put this on a fully health Prowl. Prowl has 10 attack, 1 defense. I put this on Prowl, send him out. If they don't have Bashing Shield, if they play Bashing Shield, they only have an action to boost their bot's attack in order to attack my Prowl. And if they don't kill my Prowl, and, you know, they have to waste a second attack on that Prowl. And if they have to waste 2 attacks on a Prowl, it means they're not attacking my Ironhide. You know, they're untouched. Not, I want to say untouched. But I just think overall, I think this is a high risk, high reward card in an orange meta. If you can get it to stick, it's very good. Obviously, if they have Bashing Shield, you're tight. But I mean, it is what it is, and that's just Transformers TCG at that point. But I think this would be a good meta card to play more of. I think I saw a Dinobot list play 3 of these, and it was solid for him. The Dinos are already meaty in the first place, so great card overall, and in a meta like this. The cards I was thinking about taking out for adding those in, like I said, the 3 Supercharge, possibly 2 Matrix Leadership, possibly all 3 of them. this card, again, is only really good. Well, I don't even want to say I have a better upgrade to activate. I have, like, almost every time that I had it, I always wanted to activate something else, especially combat commands. The spreading the one attack to Prowl and Ironheart were nice, but I think it's only really relevant in the like blue matchups and things like that, if anything. So that's a card I'm thinking about cutting as well. Talking about cutting the Enigma, I think I'm going to try a tournament without it, because again, in this meta, it's very hard to combine when you're reflipping your KO POW characters every turn and reusing them. And then a card I'm thinking about cutting is one Espionage, because if I add the second force field, it'll be 7 whites, and that's how many whites I played in this tournament. Now I'm going to test with 8 whites and see how much of a difference it really makes. I might just actually just go blind into the tournament and play the 8 whites and see how annoying or not annoying it is to flip so many whites on almost, on a lot of your flips. It's almost a quarter of my deck. I don't know exactly. I'm not going to get into the math and all that and exactly if it matters or not, but possibly think about cutting the Espionage, because there were a lot of times I would go to have it and didn't need it, or excuse me, go to flip it and really didn't need it and then bypass it a good couple of turns. It was really good like early game and possibly mid game. Late game, it really depends on the situation. So this is not a definite. I might just actually keep 3 because this card is just insane. Of course, when you see it early game combo with Mirage, it's really great. And then last but not least, I'm thinking about cutting a Press the Advantage, simply because the meta is not heavy Decepticon based right now, and plus you still have at least 2. So worst case scenario, you'll 100% see one of these throughout the game if you need an action to boost your attack. So that's it for the deck profile and the changes I would like to make. All right, so in this segment of the video, I figured it would be nice to have a visual of the cards and the situations that I'm talking about versus me just talking about it all the time, because I know sometimes I tend to talk really fast and it may be hard to catch exactly what I'm saying to understand what I'm talking about. So in this first example here, I wanted to talk about Sentinels and them versus their most unfavorable matchups, Insecticons. And then in my second visual, I wanted to discuss Peace Through Tyranny, and 2 examples, one not so good and one very good way of using Peace Through Tyranny, or excuse me, situations of using Peace Through Tyranny. And then in my third visual, I wanted to just talk about Sentinel mirror matches and how to better prepare yourselves for them and be aware of the of what's going on. Now you'll get a lot of that just looking at my video from the previous case tournament and then my previous video for my round 3. Both of us, we don't really have time to play test throughout the week either, so a lot of our plays could have possibly been better, but you can at least get a very good ballpark of how the matchup plays out and what you should be doing in your neck of the woods. So with that being said, jumping into Insecticons first, of course, this deck is very aggressive and it gets a lot of efficient attacks. It gets, it gets one more efficient attack than you because they play 4 characters, or they're able to play 4 characters, and they also play I Still Function as well. So, of course, when they go first, them flipping Scrapnel and sending Scrapnel into Prowl is very beneficial for them, and it sucks for you. Of course, them sending Scrapnel first is always ideal for them. Sending Scrapnel against Prowl is a very powerful opening move, probably their best opening move for Insecticons, and that's really all there is to it for them. For you, you have Hot Rod to deal 1 damage to the Scrapnel throughout the game, so you at maximum have to only attack Scrapnel twice. After you attack it the first time, though, you'll probably leave him there and won't worry about him for the rest of the game. You really want to try to focus on getting rid of Kickback and Barrage. But of course, a smart Insecticon player is going to leave their Kickback and Barrage for, to be damaged later on throughout the game. Now, talking about them going first is really not much to talk about. Where you shine and where you have a very high chance of winning, or not, excuse me, I don't want to say a very high chance. You have a solid chance of winning. One of your good openings is to, instead of opening with Prime, because Prime is your damage soaker, you're actually going to open with Prowl. And Prowl is your strongest attacker. You're going to sacrifice him for the greater good, putting him against either Scrapnel or Kickback. Attacking Kickback is probably more ideal, because if you can get rid of their Kickback and they never get to attack with it, that's really going to set them back, and that might actually decide the whole game from that first turn. Also, flipping Hot Rod in conjunction with Prowl, flipping Hot Rod to deal 1 damage to Kickback and then getting rid of it on the first turn is ideal. Now, backing up a bit, if you do actually just you won't use Sunstreaker at all first, because Sunstreaker, you can't do anything on your first turn. So there's no point in drawing the 5 cards on your first turn. But flipping Mirage is also possibly ideal to steal one of their actions out of their hand. One shall stand, one shall fall, Swarm, Reckless Charge, Supercharge, Treasure Hunt, any of those cards they're playing. will be ideal to try to slow them down. That's one of the best ways to try to beat this deck, is really control their hand. Now, granted, it sounds weird because it's like, well, don't you do that in every other matchup? Yes, but you really want to try to focus on slowing them down at all costs before things get out of hand. Now, sometimes you might do all that, and then they still, as long as they have an action and an upgrade to play, it doesn't matter to them, as long as they can play those cards and just wreck your bots. Ideally, if you can try to get rid of all of one type of card, I'd notice that if they're only able to play an upgrade every turn, or they're only able to play an action every turn, that's really going to set them back in general and give you a higher chance of winning. So after talking with Vector Sigma and a couple of other people and doing some testing on my own and doing attack sequences, I think that me personally, flipping Mirage first and then sending Prowl into kickback is the most ideal way to play this matchup when you're going first. Now, if you can get your Prowl at least up to 8 or 9 attack, if you get it to 10, obviously that's great. 10 is the magic number to be able to kill the kickback. This is very similar to Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend back in Wave 1 from the double Prime versus Insecticon matchup, for Prime trying to KO kickback by flipping One Shot Stand, Plasma Burst, the bigger they are, and leap in the battle. So here, that's what you're trying to do. But let's say you get your Prowl all the way to 9 and you just miss killing the kickback. Well, a smart Insecticon player, what they're probably going to do is they're going to flip kickback and they're going to send their kickback in to at least get some value out of it. At least that's what I would do as an Insecticon player. Now, either way, what's going to end up happening is your Hot Rod's going to flip and kill and deal 1 to the kickback, but at least they got some value out of the kickback. But that's good for you, because now once you kill the kickback that way, now your Prime and Ironhide can go and attack Chop Shop, Barrage, or Scrapnel. Now, ideally, if you have, in this situation, let's say they do kill your Prowl after attacking with kickback. After you kill the Scrapnel, or excuse me, the kickback with Hot Rod, let's say you have Press the Advantage and Grenade Launcher in your hand. I think that's a very good, very opportune time to use the Ironhide or Prime to target down the Barrage with the Press the Advantage, and then put the Grenade Launcher on and try to KO the Barrage, because then that again puts them in that same situation. It sets them back from using their best character in the at all. They have to have I Still Function, and even then, if they use I Still Function and do a flip, then they also miss one of their flips on their other characters. So that really puts them in an awkward position, and honestly, that's one of the only better ways to win. Of course, you have their direct damage, and besides that, you just play accordingly and do what you can, because overall the matchup is tough. But of course, you're not going to go into the game just like, oh, what is this tough, I'm going to lose. No, I mean, do what you can and play to the best of your ability. And no matchup is unwinnable. It's unfavorable, but it definitely can still be won. Be looking out for my gameplay of my second Insecticon match versus John Palmer of Vector Sigma, and from round 5, and that'll be coming up very soon. Okay, so here's a very ideal field of the Dinobot versus Sentinel matchup. It's very ideal for the Dinobot player to flip Snarl first and stack an improvised Shield of Peace Through Tyranny and go after Prowl. Prowl is usually always the first target. So let's say they go do that and they attack your Prowl. Well, let's say in this situation you do have Peace Through Tyranny. You could Peace Through Tyranny your Prowl and KO it. And then now you get 2 attacks, because your first turn you activate your action or upgrade and you send your Prime into the Snarl, and then on your next turn you get the draw, you get another flip from one of your characters, you get another action, and you get another upgrade. You upgrade your Ironhide and you go to attack, and let's say you kill the Snarl. Now that play specifically isn't very good, because the Snarl is not as important as Grimlock is. If the situation were like this, for whatever crazy reason your opponent happens to send in Grimlock first, which they won't, but the point is, like, let's say this is Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, or King Starscream, or any character like that. If you have a character that you really want to get rid of, that you think is very important to your opponent, which you'll be able to tell as soon as looking at their field, when you begin the game, that's the only time you would actually use a play like this. Another visual and an example, this is probably not the most realistic field, because the Prowl should probably be KO'd in this example, but I'm just setting the characters up so you can see where you should use your Peace Through Tyranny at. And this goes for any matchup. Of course, any matchup that's using Peace Through Tyranny that's able to, besides the Devastator deck, because all the Devastator cards are lower than 6 stars, so you can't destroy them with Peace Through Tyranny. But in this situation, it's ideal to use Peace Through Tyranny here, because you're going to get 2 attacks from their characters, and ideally you want to attack down on Grimlock. So what you could do is you could Peace Through Tyranny your useless Prowl, because your Prowl will probably be able to stand after attacks, but the thing is, he probably won't. Your opponent will probably easily just attack it next turn, so you don't get any more value out of it. So let's say you Peace Through Tyranny your Prowl, and then now you have 2 attacks. You can activate your action and or upgrade, or whatever the case is, and your Optimus Prime can attack down on Grimlock. You get to go again, and then your Ironhide also gets to attack down on Grimlock. Now, let's say you don't kill the Grimlock in this situation. Grimlock had full health. You know, he had a bashing shield on it, so he had 3 defense. Well, here, now that we're all tapped, we all stand, and you get to go again for Peace Through Tyranny. And now you get to attack again with your Optimus or Ironhide and hopefully try to kill the Grimlock. After 3 attacks, Grimlock, I'd say, should be KO'd. But that's a situation where you want to use Peace Through Tyranny like that, because once their bots are tapped, you get multiple attacks on one character. You can pile up a whole bunch of damage on it. You get to untap, and then you get to go at it again for the final kill before your opponent gets to do anything. So I think those are 2 examples. One not so good, and again, it depends on what character they have tapped, and one very good example of using Peace Through Tyranny. And again, that example can go for any orange deck that uses Peace Through Tyranny. Lastly, I just want to talk real quick about the mirror match and a couple things that helped me. A lot of what you saw in the video is reminiscent of what I would do any other time, like especially from my match with Mr. Silva from a couple case tournaments ago when we played the mirror match. The first time ever, you know, I was still stuck on combining and, you know, having blues in my deck, so by turn 3 I could supercharge my prime and backup beam my prime, so I could definitely hit the effect all in, so I could combine by turn 5. When he went first, he attacked me with his prime. I was thrown off because I'm like, wow, he's attacking with prime first. And after a couple of turns, I forgot which turn, I realized that he's not trying to combine. But I think, when he reflipped his Mirage. He reflipped his Mirage. Okay. He reflipped his Mirage back to his other mode and to set up for the following turn to Mirage me again. And at that point, I knew he wasn't playing the Enigma because he set himself back. So, seeing those 2 plays, I didn't really realize that I could reflip those guys again. I'm thinking about just flipping them once. I was one-track mind with trying to combine. But seeing how he played the deck really opened my eyes to better plays with the deck in terms of, not combining. It took me a couple tournaments to finally take my Enigmas down to 1 and eventually 0, which will probably be in the next tournament. But I guess you could say I see the light. I like how that plays, and I'm a fan. So with that being said, I think it's very ideal to attack with your prime first. If you win the dice roll with the new rules, the dice roll says that, or excuse me, the new rules say that winning the dice roll allows you to pick who goes first or second. If you, as a Sentinel player in the mirror match, win the dice roll, I think you should go first and send your prime in, because now your prime can go get damage on the character you want to get damage on, either their Prowl or their Ironhide, and then you can also make them attack where you want to attack. Now, granted, they can do the same thing to you. On their first turn, they can send their prime into your prime with no problem, and then, of course, yes, their Prowl gets to attack your Prowl first, because your prime attacks their prime, then they're going to send their prime into your prime. Then your Ironhide is going to attack into their prime as well. Or no, your Ironhide is going to attack into their prime, and then their Ironhide is going to attack into your Ironhide, and then now your prime has to attack into their Ironhide, and then now their Prowl gets to attack on any one of these 3 characters, and it'll probably be Prowl. Now, there is something else you can actually do. Putting a static laser on Ironhide alone makes him all of a sudden scarier than Prowl. Obviously, 7 bold 1 is a lot more powerful than 5 bold 1. If you can get a static laser on Ironhide early, you can make the new target Ironhide. Now, him having that extra 1 defense more than Prowl will be give him a little bit more survivability, so he may survive. But having your opponent detour into attacking your Ironhide, of course, leaves your Prowl free to still be, rather undamaged and still get some decent attacks in. I'm not going to say it's 100% correct to go first, but that's my line of play, especially because I'm not trying to combine. Also, on my first turn, I like to flip Mirage. First turn, I almost never flip Sunstreaker. There's no reason to flip Sunstreaker when you're not allowed to use an action or upgrade on your first turn. Hot Rod, you could possibly flip your Hot Rod and deal 1 damage to their Prowl and actually send your Prowl in to try to kill their Prowl, in that same idea of trying to kill their kickback. But that's really going to come down to luck. You can do all the testing you want and flip variances, but you can, flip enough to kill their Prowl in all of your test games and then get into a tournament and then attack with Prowl and flip like a blue in, 2 one-shot stands or something like that, and then, not get the kill. So I mean, I guess you still get some decent value and get a whole bunch of damage on the prowl, and maybe possibly put it in direct damage range. But so those are just some of your options. I think you should play around with it, test different things, test different angles, because you may see something else that I haven't seen, and go from there. So that's really about it that I want to talk about. I have 2 events coming up. I have one and back in Top Deck Games. I think Top Deck Games is doing these tournaments every month. Shout out to them. I really appreciate these tournaments and get some decent testing in. There were 18 players in the last tournament, 18 players again in the 18 players in the past 2 tournaments, excuse me, and 21 in the one before that. So hopefully we get a decent turnout again. Excited for that, and then also excited for a tournament we have on June 2nd, which is a Sunday. So our first big Sunday tournament at the comic book store in Glassboro, New Jersey. Shout out to Wreck and Rule. That's their squad, or excuse me, that's their home store. They have a San Diego Comic Con sealed pack for first place. So first place gets a sealed pack. Second place gets 1 full box of Wave 2, I'm assuming. Third and fourth get like, I think, 16 packs, and then fifth through eighth get like 8 packs or something like that. So that should be a nice turnout and draw a lot of people and definitely have some fun. So those are the only 2 events I can think of that I'll be going to soon, and then maybe 1 or 2 more events in between until we hit Wave 3 at the end of June 28th. Excited for that. I'm excited for Secret Actions because that might put blue decks back on the map. It sounds like it's a lot of trap-worthy type things, trapping your opponent into doing something and triggering something on their turn, like the first Secret Action we saw. I forgot exactly what it's called, but when your opponent attacks, you can flip your set Secret Action that you have in the field and draw 2 cards and then set a card on top of your deck. So, ideally set a double blue or whatever on top of your deck. So that's going to be pretty cool. And I think cards like that in general are definitely going to put blue back on the map because they've fallen off because of Bashing Shield, killing armors. And then, of course, Decepticons have kind of fallen off because of Press the Advantage. So I'm anticipating and going to guess that Decepticons are going to get more love than Autobots in this upcoming set. The upcoming set Siege. So very excited for that. Shout out to WOTC for keeping this game fresh and releasing new content and releasing new cards. I'm very excited to see exactly what happens for the competitive scene. It's going to make the game a lot more skill intensive coming up, as more new cards and mechanics and, focus and the black icon and all these things come out. So looking forward to that and look forward to more videos coming back from me. I'm done babbling. I'm going to get up out of here. You guys have a great day and a great night. This is S. Akuma heading out. Peace.